Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2024 Solve Global AI Summit. My name is Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist for us here at Rackspace Technology, and I'm so delighted that you are joining us today. Now, if you've seen any of our programs here at Rackspace, one thing we love to do is not just talk at you, but talk with you. So would you please introduce yourselves, tell us who you are, tell us where you are. Look at John Swanson already doing the instructions. You're going to see yourself over there on the side of the screen once all that caches and refreshes up. So I'd love for you to do that. In fact, let's not make that just a one-time thing as well. As we're going through the conversation, if you have any questions or comments for myself or for the panelists, there's the place to do it. We've got eagle eyes watching them. They're going to message them to me because there's a lot of comments coming in. I'm so glad that you are here. We have some amazing panelists for you here today. And it starts with our very own president of AI, technology, and sustainability, Srini Koushik. Srini has been with Rackspace almost 3 years now. It's amazing how time flies. And we also have Victor Rojo from AWS, our sponsor of the research that we're going to be unpacking throughout our time here today. And then we also have Rehgan Bliley. Now, Rehgan is no stranger to any of our programs around here because she is such a great resource, and we're delighted to have her wisdom here to help unpack this research that we have with you here today. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to start with a conversation about responsible AI, because whenever embarking on any AI project, it's important from the very beginning to consider what responsible AI is and how to do that effectively. Also, we have the benefits of AI as the companies found in our research, as well as the challenges and risks of AI. Well, there's also key AI technology, and then, of course, how to build and implement an effective AI strategy. Now, that's a lot to cover in just an hour, but all of this comes from the research that we'll be sending you after the program, and you'll be able to get even more of that information. So, mate, we're so glad that you are here. Vinod, we're so glad you're here. Folks, I don't know if you realize this. If you're watching these comments go by, our audience is huge. We have over 54 countries represented in those that registered for the event here today. This is truly a global event. And it was a global event when we went out to do the research as well. In fact, we went out and talked to about 1,420 IT decision makers in 10 different countries and representing about 10 different major industries as well. So this is a comprehensive bit of research. This isn't just our opinion. You're going to hear some opinion based on experience today, but all of this reflecting from our research that is fact-based from the 1,420 IT decision makers across these 10 different countries and 10 different industries. And as we think about the data that we were able to receive back, there were a couple of key stats that really caught my attention. And one of those was the fact that as we look at this research, see, this isn't our first rodeo here, folks. I'm coming to you from Texas. I can say rodeo. Is that we do a lot of these same types of questions year over year. In fact, when we asked our respondents the question in 2023 how important or critical is AI to your organization's strategy? Well, last year that number was 55%. This year, that number, 81%, a significant growth from one year to the next. In fact, if we were to carry that forward, we actually did ask the question saying, well, this time next year, what do you expect it to be? And that number, 100%. So that's a lot of companies doing a lot of AI work. So with that, I would love to start by bringing up Srini Koushik. As I mentioned, Srini is our president of AI, technology, and sustainability here at Rackspace Technology. Srini, welcome to the program.
Jeff, it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad that you are live from what we call Star Wars headquarters. You've got some fun stuff in the background there. People are going to get to see throughout the years. You're quite the collector.
Well, it's, as I mentioned to you earlier, yesterday would have been Revenge of the Sixth.
That's right, it would have been. Well, Srini, I just mentioned that bit of research where we would talk about the amount of AI projects. You have been in technology for a number of years. First of all, does this amount of growth from what was it, 55% up to 81%, projecting 100% next year, does this type of technology adoption surprise you? And do you think this wave is going to continue?
The answer is yes and no, right? Yes, because I think the speed is just phenomenal. No, because AI is actually very different than anything else we've seen before, because this is a technology that embeds itself into everything that you do. So when you think about it from that way, most of us that are sitting here on this call and having this conversation, we're using AI in multiple forms every single day. So it's not surprising that you go from 50 to 80 to 100 in like just 2 years.
That's right. Srini, I'm going to ask you a question I asked you on an event we were at a few weeks ago, and that is, as you have been adopting AI, how much of your day have you gotten back to be more productive when we think about your own personal productivity?
No kidding, about 50% of my day.
50%. And that's achievable by anybody right now. We're going to talk about some strategies to do that.
Yeah, it's essentially, in fact, I say it's 50% of my day back. And my total cost per month to do that is about $85, right? Between the 3 or 4 subscriptions that I have to get to make sure that I have the professional versions of those solutions.
That's pretty amazing. Now, Srini, as you really spearheaded here at Rackspace our own efforts around AI, you helped even pump the brakes a little bit, because you said we just can't go put these science projects on companies' doors and run away. These science projects, because there is some serious technology behind the scenes, need to be done in a responsible way. Would you mind unpacking for a minute? What does that mean, responsible AI?
I'm glad you're starting there, because I think, as I told you before, the AI is very different than anything else we've seen before. It embeds itself in everything that you do, right? And it is extremely capable. So it's kind of like, you mentioned Star Wars, it's the Spider-Man thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And I think with AI, it is extremely important that we do that. And in FAIR, we have defined responsible AI through 3 different components. The first one is symbiotic, which means that if you're building and implementing AI solutions, it has to augment and work with human beings, not replace them. Yeah. And that's a big component of what that is. And if you ever hear us pitch AI, we talk about AI as an employee, because we just think about it as a coworker and existing in a symbiotic way. If you're going to embed AI that way into your organization, it better be secure, because any human employee you hire, you want to be able to trust them. You want to be able to rely on their integrity and veracity, right? And that's the reason why secure becomes very important. And then, look, this technology has a lot of downsides, right? And unless you actually make that top priority to make sure that you are mitigating the downsides while amplifying the upside of this technology, only bad things can happen if you don't do that. And that's why the sustainable component of it actually comes in. So for us, responsible AI really dictates what solutions you go out and build and how do you actually end up using it.
Yeah, well, let's double click into the sustainability part of that for just a second, because, well, first of all, you as our president of sustainability, but also because AI does get a bad rap, and in some cases, especially in times getting us to this where we are today, it sort of earned it, because it does take a lot of energy to do the things that AI needs, the training and so forth. But AI is also now being used to help combat that and do it in better ways. Folks are getting smarter about it. Why don't you tell us a little about that?
Well, from a pure environmental sustainability standpoint, if you kind of think about it and how much energy and cooling and power and water these things consume, it's a negative, in terms of it consumes a lot of energy. I saw a stat that said one training run of GPT 3.5. It was roughly the equal, one training run, right? Not the entire training, was roughly the equivalent of 300 plus New York to San Francisco airline trips.
Wow.
Right? In the amount of carbon emissions that come in. And so, again, I think what it comes down to from a sustainability standpoint is it's all about trade-offs, right? You and I have talked before, and I've said the only green technology is the technology you don't use. Given that this is going to be embedded into everything we're doing, responsible AI allows us to make sure that you're harnessing this power for the good, right? Can you actually do it to simplify what we do? Can you do it to minimize travel? Can you use it to remove people from toil and move them into higher level jobs to be able to do that?
Yeah.
you can actually use it for that technology. And part of that responsible AI framework that I talked to you about was all about making sure that you helping organizations choose the right solutions to be able to go out and implement it.
Yeah, Tim in the comments made the point when we were asking about, will this continue? And he says that combine the importance of the tech with the hype. There's a bubble to burst somewhere, but it's not going to be anytime soon. And I wonder if it's a bubble that bursts or if it's a bubble that actually just becomes part of everything that we do, because it is that ubiquitous technology. It's like electricity powering things. I think we're going to think of it less as this single thing of AI to it's now this technology that empowers almost everything we do.
Well, if there's a bubble in this case, I think at the speed at which AI is moving, it's already burst, is the way I'd say it, right? Because if you think about this time last year, everything was AI, right? And everybody said, I'm going to be building something, I'm going to use ChatGPT or any of those things to be able to drive that, or co-pilots or any other technology that comes in. In a very short year, where we are right now is there are organizations that we talk to are basically looking at it saying the desirability of AI is very high. Everybody wants to be in it. The 85%, 81%, what you said.
Yeah.
The feasibility, can I implement the solutions, is getting better and better every day. There's a new large language model. There's a new solution that's out there. So that's getting better and better every day. Now, the question is the viability of AI. For the cost that it costs, for the environmental costs, for the training costs, like how much it costs to run this thing in production, can I actually implement it so that it actually delivers on this value? So what we've seen is a moderation. It's like, that's why I said, bubble may have already burst. Is a moderation where there's no longer people trying to go and build these toys and science experiments. They're actually starting to think about how do we embed AI into the organization so that we can harness and get those benefits that you're looking at. So I kind of tend to think that, like, with the speed at which this technology is moving, everything that we're used to just got faster.
It really has. Now, one last question for you. You made a comment earlier, and that was around considering AI as bringing AI into your organization as bringing an employee into an organization. And as this desirability for AI grows inside of organizations, up 86% from 74%, and we think about how we consider this on the governance side of things, maybe unpack for a second what that looks like. How do we draw the parallels of AI to an employee?
Yeah, I like, this is one of the things that when we launched FAIR last year, the first thing I came out and said is, like, that most technology companies love to invent new buzzwords and make things tougher than they are.
Yeah.
I think what we are trying to do is to make it more familiar to people. And the way to make it familiar to people is when you are hiring an employee. Right? Most organizations are very, very clear on what their hiring policies are. They're like, does the employee that we're hiring, do they actually match? Do thetheir values match our values? Right? And so you saw that thing. That was me.
There's a little AI in the background.
AI in the background, which just brings. But anyway, when you're hiring an employee, you're actually looking at, do their values align with us? Do they have the skills that support us?
Yeah.
Most in the US, when you hire someone, you actually do a background check on that employee to do that. Why I say AI is like an employee is when you implement AI in your organization, you can leverage those experiences that you had earlier to be able to go and build a lot of these solutions. So, like, bringing a new AI in is like checking on this. So when you're considering buying a particular AI solution from someone, what data was it trained on? Okay, I'm doing a background check. What data is it getting trained on? What are the values of the company that trained that, so that you make sure that when this AI is embedded into your organization as an employee, it really contributes to the benefit of the organization and the advancement of the organization, as opposed to so, like, for us, AI as an employee is a core tenet of how we tend to think about introducing AI into enterprises.
All right. I just have to call out Dan's comment. Well, thank you for bringing it up. HR, please help onboard the new digital employee. Exactly. All right. So, Srini, I'm going to have you back up here in a little bit to have some other conversations. But now I want to move into having a conversation more about now we've brought AI in. And when we look at how organizations from the research, when we look at how employees are utilizing AI today, well, we find it using in some really interesting areas. And here to help talk about that is Rehgan Bliley. So, Rehgan, come on up. Welcome to the program. We're so glad that you're here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
And indeed, tell us about your company really quick.
Sure. So I'm co-founder and CEO of AlignAI. We are an adoption and governance platform for data and AI. We've been working with tons of enterprise organizations on helping them identify good use cases, scope them, create policies and procedures around data and AI, and help them to operationalize this and eventually get value out of AI.
Fantastic. So not your first rodeo to talk about AI. I'm going to say, I see how many times I can say rodeo today. All right. So when we look at those use cases, how companies are utilizing it, when we look at the research, we find that intelligent search, document processing, fraud detection, and such are some of those main ways that our respondents, those 1,420 IT decision makers, said that AI is making an impact in their organizations today. What I'd love for you to do, Rehgan, is maybe unpack a few examples in your experience and your customers, how they're utilizing and getting benefits from AI today.
Yeah, I think what's important is to break down how companies are thinking about these use cases. And so you've got your everyday AI, which are things like, document processing or semantic search across documentation inside of your organization. And then you've got what people are considering groundbreaking AI, right? These are the differentiating AI capabilities inside of a company that'll help them differentiate themselves in the market. These are things that are going to be more specific to that company and the data that they have. And so when I talk to organizations about use case identification, what we're seeing is a lot of this bottom up. What are some really easy tasks? What are some embedded AI applications we can get up and running really quickly? That's why you see things like semantic search around documents, because Microsoft has the ability to do that really quickly and give you access to that information really quickly. So cost-wise, feasibility-wise, that's where people are starting. They're starting to gain that muscle memory of how do I get these types of solutions embedded inside of the organization.
So also when we looked at the research and what we found is that one of those use cases that companies are really looking for is employee productivity. And so how do you see companies using AI specifically around helping employee productivity?
Yeah, I think most people are starting with education on what does that mean? Where can I be most productive as an employee? If I'm in the sales organization or finance organization or marketing team, where can I become more productive? Now, there are very common use cases like writing emails and taking notes from Teams calls and those types of things that can add to productivity gains. But there's things like developer actually using Microsoft Copilot to help write code, right? That they're seeing, I think, a 40% increase in productivity of software developers from that perspective. So looking at the different types of roles and functions, I love what Srini said, like breaking down the different types of tasks that different employees and functions have across the organization, identifying ones that are fairly predictable, fairly common and easy for AI to tackle, starting with those first, and really thinking about how can we do this lift for many employees across the organization. What sort of tasks are we doing, like coordinating calendars, things that we don't want to be spending time doing anymore. And so when we think about those productivity gains, we start there, and then we start thinking about the kind of bigger impact, groundbreaking, game-changing AI applications.
Right. And what's so exciting about this is we're not saying, obviously it's technology that is empowering and underpinning all of this, but it's not an IT project. It's being used everywhere. Diego makes the comment, you may have seen it streamed by the fact that it's impacting every area of the organization. So Rehgan, now let's talk about how companies are measuring these outcomes. What are they looking to get back? In some cases, what we find out of the research is they're looking for, well, two things: revenue growth and cost savings. Oftentimes we don't see these two paired together. We're either trying to save some money or we're trying to make some money, not necessarily all together here. Can you give us some examples of how AI is able to do both of these things?
Yeah, I'd say on the cost saving side, those tend to be a lot easier to estimate. So I would break it down into revenue generating activities and cost saving activities. And then I would also break it down into generative AI and non-generative AI. Like we've been using machine learning and AI techniques in organizations for a long time, especially insurance organizations, manufacturing. And so those are a lot more cut and dry on ROI. I can start to look at where the model predicted, I can set up automations, I can look at where it went well, where it didn't. And any kind of supply chain optimization, those types of things are a lot more easy to calculate. When you get into generative AI, you're starting to look at attribution. So what sort of quality improvements did I have as a marketing associate on the copy, the images, the campaigns, and how did an AI influence what I was already doing? That's a lot harder to look at. So cost savings are things like productivity gains. Revenue generating activities could be shortening sales cycles, going after different segments of the market with new hyper personalization using AI. So those are just some high level examples.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned insurance as an industry. That's a company or an industry that we found was well super concerned about some of the risks and challenges. And to talk about that a little bit more, I'd love to bring up Victor Rojo. Now, Victor is with AWS, and so when he comes up here, what I would love to do is have him introduce himself. Victor, welcome to the program. And Rehgan, you can stick around. Yeah, we'd love to have you. So Victor, first of all, you're with AWS. Thank you so much for helping sponsor this research. Well, for sponsoring this research. Tell us what you do over at AWS.
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks for having me here. I'm working as a tech leader for the conversational AI and generative AI partners competency programs. These are it's a group of partners who have demonstrated already experience, expertise, and best of all, solutions and success for customers that have implemented this type of projects.
Fantastic. We're so
technologies.
Fantastic. So glad that you are here. Now, security, accuracy, and dealing with legacy technology in an organization are all cited in our research as areas that were the biggest concern. We look at that right there, the data. Well, Victor, let's start with you. There are a lot of angles that we can consider when we think about security, and let's start with the data itself. How can companies ensure that the data that's being brought together is kept as secure as possible?
First of all, generative AI and all these type of technologies are implemented to drive business value. Companies need to demonstrate that the adoption brings benefits to the company and to the customers. Most of these companies need to really customize the models, the foundation models that they are using in order to bring those or to meet those requirements that the company has, that the customers have, but also to bring hyper customized experiences to their customers. There are multiple methods for doing this. For example, using the most basic expression could be if you should prompt engineering. The next one is retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and the next level is fine tuning. When using these different types of options to customize models, data security becomes one of the top concerns for the customers, talking about where will my data remain, if my data will remain in my environment. And they start sometimes with the traditional or essential measures like encryption, access controls, monitoring, data classifications. Compliance is crucial depending the industry where the customers are working on. And part of the additional measures that security requires for generative AI or in general for AI is the implementation of data governance practices. For example, assessing the origin of the data, or assessing also how this data flows through the life cycle for training models or customizing them, and also for serving this information, assessing if the information that it's served or as an answer from the AI is not showing personal identifiable information or PII. So that they cannot bring leaks from customers' data, and also paying attention to copyrighted information from these data origins. Those are some of the multiple aspects that can be considered for AI security in this new version of AI.
That's right. That's right. Thanks for that. Now, there's Elizabeth asked the question, and it ties directly to one of the things we wanted to unpack here a little. And Liz says, I work with a healthcare organization who's concerned about hallucination with the use of AI. Would love to hear more on the progress being made in this area. And Rehgan, that takes me to the question I wanted to ask you, and that is the accuracy of the data. Around accuracy of data. Let's talk about strategies to keep that data as shiny and new and accurate at launch point as it can be over time, because this is not a technology that we can set and forget, that we can launch and move on to the next big thing. That data undercurrent needs to be monitored, refreshed, and ensured to be accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two core components when you're looking at accuracy for AI. So the first is around data. So you can't just put AI on all of your documents that you know are outdated for 5+ years, right? You're going to get information back that's inaccurate because it's pulling from the information it has access to. So really curating and understanding the quality dimensions of data prior to training, prior to leveraging it, super, super important for you to be able to do that and tag it appropriately. As Victor was mentioning, you want to be able to tag data you can use, acceptable use policies around data. So there's some additional metadata that you want to capture and tag on data sets over time. The second part on hallucination specifically is really having human in the loop and being able to continue reinforcement, learning and training on those solutions to get more accurate, and having kind of experts in the middle that can vet some of the answers that are coming out and make improvements to that over time.
I love it. You know who has a lot, I think a lot of wisdom we can share on this? Little off script, but I'd love to bring Srini back up just for 1 second to comment on what Liz is asking about. So Srini, we'll bring you back up, and what do you have to say here?
Well, no, I think Liz's question is very valid, and especially in financial services and in healthcare industries where you are dealing with critical information and the decisions you make affect people's lives. AI, I think Rehgan mentioned it. The human in the middle is still the solution, right? Every one of us has got a credit card from one of the big companies. You get those fraud alerts on your phone, always saying, "Hey, is this a fraudulent transaction? Can you validate it?" What they're doing there is it's an AI implementation of an agent with the human in the middle, right? And especially in healthcare, again, having come from the healthcare industry, type 1 and type 2 errors are pretty major. Like when you get the type 1, type 2 wrong on machine learning models that Rehgan talked about, it has meaningful consequences. It has like meaningful and harmful consequences in that space. So I think when so the types of things you do in generative AI, like to make sure that you minimize the impact, you'll never eliminate it. Minimize the impact is to kind of be very careful about the model that you're choosing and what data it was trained on. You have to make sure that your supply chain of data is pristine, right? Meaning it's not just set and forget. That supply chain of data, it's like you're building a product. You may have built the best, world's best car the first 3 months, but if your supply chain changes and the quality drops, your car is going to have problems. So think about it that way, and you drive that. And then the eventual backstop is human in the middle. Right? Even the AI can simplify all of those decisions for you, but then put it back in front of the human being to say this. Right? Quick thing I'll say on that is, in one of the prior companies we worked with, we implemented a machine learning model that looked at data to predict whether this thing has to have a second opinion from a nurse practitioner or a doctor.
Yeah.
Right? We could have made that, but a 99% accuracy rate on that thing was not good enough, right? Because of the way you actually do that. So the best implementation of that was to kind of use the model to do the automation, but then put it in front of this. And so the default was, hey, if we didn't know, put it in front of the nurse practitioner, right? So it's a cheaper resource than having it in front of a doctor. So there are techniques that you do to implement AI responsibly in organizations. And healthcare is actually, many people think insurance and healthcare are laggards in technology. They actually are leaders. They're more judicious about where they implement technology.
All right, Srini, 30 seconds or less. Define type 1 and type 2 type of errors.
Well, again, I think the type 1, type 2 errors are essentially when if the result is actually positive. So if you predict someone having, you're looking at the symptoms to predict someone having cancer.
Yeah.
Right. If they actually have cancer and you predict it right, like that's one piece of it. But if they have cancer and you say no, if the model predicts it as no, that typically falls into that type 1. Again, whenever I put that confusion matrix, by the way, that type 1, type 2 is actually called a confusion matrix because every single time I got to draw it on the board to kind of figure it out. So the type 1 errors are where it actually is the case, but the model predicted it wrong. And then the type 2 is the other way around, right? Where it's negative, but you predicted positive.
But you predict positive. Got it.
Yeah, and depending on what you're actually, what application you're thinking about, right? So banks and fraud transactions are trying to minimize type 2 versus the healthcare companies trying to minimize type 1 types of errors as you go and work on it, because accuracy and precision matter when it comes to this piece. And this is all, Rehgan did it very well. She talked about it as traditional machine learning and then generative AI, right? Like I'm talking about the traditional machine learning space.
Very good. All right. Thanks so much. Hey, Victor, I have a question for you now as well. So when we think about all of this advanced technology, in order to get down that road, some folks are thinking, I've got some older technology that I have to deal with. What are AWS's strategies? In just a minute or two, as we're getting a little tight on time, what are AWS's strategies to help companies come along? Maybe it's patterns, maybe it's technology itself, to update their own technologies.
Well, AWS has already a structured migration and modernization strategy using AWS or cloud native services and architectures. With generative AI, the customers that are migrating their workloads to the cloud can use generative AI to automate complex tasks. For example, code conversion from legacy code to modern languages and frameworks. This can also reduce the data loss during that migration. Also, doing mapping between legacy data with new data that is required to migrate from legacy data sources to new data sources. It's another addition that we can have using generative AI as part of these migration strategies. And also refactoring applications, for example, analyzing code bases, maybe doing improvements to those code bases when migrating to the cloud and to this new paradigm helps a lot using AI. And also using generative AI to automate testing, validation, and migrate those modernized applications before migrating them. It's one of the best things because this is also part of the adoption of a secure AI development that starts early in the development stages, and also the addition of continuous monitoring and automated testing. It's part of what generative AI can help to the users in the migration of their existing legacy workloads.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much. Now, Victor, I mentioned before, we are so grateful for our partnership as a company with AWS. You guys are fantastic. We love the fact that also you did sponsor the research that we went out and did. In keeping with that, we'd love to show you provided a video of some of the amazing things that you guys are up to. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at that right now? Oh, what will you create? Fantastic stuff. Hey, Victor, let's talk for a second about, we talk about the data, we talk about the people. It would be nothing without the technology that rides underneath. When we look at the research that we got back from our 1,420 respondents, we found that where these companies are investing are things like machine learning, predictive analytics, AI for IoT, RPA, NLP, Edge are some of those examples. What are some of those technologies that AWS has specifically in and around these areas?
This is a great question and great survey results that we are seeing here, that customers are and companies are already investing in machine learning. They are also riding the wave for generative AI in the part of natural language processing. And there are multiple options and technologies for all of these topics. For example, when talking about machine learning and AI, one of the top services that AWS has is Amazon SageMaker, which allows the data scientists and machine learning engineers to train and deploy models quickly. But also it implies thinking about developers. Developers now can use AI services that exist or have existed since a long time in AWS, and now with solutions like Amazon Bedrock or Amazon Q, there are new options for the developers and business users. On the other side, for talking about RPA, there are solutions like and services like step functions in conjunction with Lambda functions can deliver a good level of coordination of processes that could be long time running, or just the orchestration of multiple functions to achieve certain process or goal. Also, in the mix of AI technologies like Amazon Textile for intelligent documents processing, which is one of the top investments the companies are doing for handling documentation, no matter the industry, it's a good choice. When talking about NLP, and generative AI, of course, I already mentioned Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Q, but we can think about Amazon language services like Amazon Comprehend, Amazon Transcribe, Amazon Translate, Amazon Poly, and Amazon Lex are used in conjunction for achieving really cool things, text analysis, speech recognition, translation, and natural language understanding. Also, Amazon SageMaker can help to build custom models that can be used in conjunction with these technologies. When talking about edge technologies, AWS IoT Greengrass is one of the options to collect data that can be used to start training models based on the information from millions of IoT data sources. And also the portability for this data can be achieved using AWS SnowCon, which is a small edge computing and data transfer device that AWS provides to the users.
Fantastic. Love the technology, love the partnership. Thank you so much. Now what I want to do is shift our focus. We've talked about, and we look at these findings of what we have coming out. We talk about other aspects when we think about how many companies, how much they're investing, what the results they're looking for. Well, let's now talk a little bit about strategy. And as we transfer into this section, I'm going to bring Srini and Rehgan back up to chat with me for a little, because one of the things that we found that I thought was so interesting also, and was when we look at the amount of investment that these 1,420 decision makers are making from last year to this year, and the number that we're seeing for this year is almost a doubling, well, literally a doubling of their investments from 2023 to 2024. $2.5 million on average being invested from each of these companies that as they go into their AI adventures. And so, Srini, we think about these technologies. We think about this level of investment in what's happening. That's a lot of money. Is this an abnormality? Is this a trend we expect to see continue? Do we see it just turn into part of the DNA of what's expected to make these organizations run, because AI is part of the fabric?
Yep. Well, look, it's not the number 2.5 million, and as an average is not surprising given the general trend of that research that we're talking about, right? 81% saying AI is going to be embedded in others. But here's a key thing that we're also seeing. In most cases in enterprises, they are increasing the spend in AI, but they're trying to make that up in some other part. So having been a CIO for 25 plus years and still all of Rackspace's IT rolls up through me, the challenge is like, should we use and should we be implementing AI? Absolutely, right? But has it demonstrated enough value, generative AI especially, has it generated enough value back to that increased revenues and reduced costs? The answer is it's starting to happen, but it's not there yet. So at least for this year and going into next year as well, I think the viability of these projects will have to be proven, and some of these need to be self-funded within an IT budget, right? Like my overall IT budget goes up by the same 2 or 3%. But this $2.5 million has to kind of come in from what we've got in there. So it's kind of what we're seeing, but it's not surprising, right? And everybody's wading into this space, and they're actually trying to. And our hyperscaler partners can validate that, right? They haven't yet seen the significant bump in consumption, because the consumption for these models tends to be at the expense of something else, right? Like you've made up that money so you can actually invest it back into this thing.
So folks, also, there is a lot of content that we're covering here. You, as a registered person watching this video, you have the ability we'll be sending you over the next day or two your copy of this research, and all of the content is in there, all of the graphs that you're seeing. So if you're having trouble reading them on the screen, don't worry, you're going to have all that you want. Now, when we think about That's a question I actually want to pose to both of you. When we think about how AI is being used today, and the research shows this as well, we're seeing it being used to enhance product development and existing products, as opposed to necessarily these big breakthrough moments. And so, Rehgan, I'll start with you for a second. What do you think companies should be doing right now to set themselves up, or should they be setting themselves up for breakthrough moments?
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident that most organizations are focused on the everyday AI use cases. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. I alluded to this point as well. I think the big piece here is you still see a lot of organizations still trying to figure out their risk management plans, their rollout plans, their enablement plans, their adoption plans. And so why build that muscle on something that's supposed to be breakthrough that you know is going to cost millions and millions of dollars to build? Why not establish all of those standards, best practices, and policies as an organization on something maybe a little bit less risk, less cost upfront? So we saw that a lot last year. Lots of organizations just doing pilots, trying to figure out how much is this going to cost? What are the calculations for cost for something like this? And then this year, I've heard a lot of companies talking about teeing themselves up for those breakthrough AI use cases. And so I think we'll see a lot of progress this year. Companies are going to have to really identify what is their differentiating factor in the market. What data do they uniquely have access to that no one else has access to, that can't be replicated, that can't be built inside of a product that's already provided for them? I think a lot of companies last year got burned on kind of preemptively building some technologies that eventually got rolled into existing stacks and software that they had already purchased. And so I think people are being a little bit more cautious around that. Is it a build? Is it a boost? Is it a buy kind of situation? And really, what is IP? What is differentiated about us? And once you can answer those questions and you've got the muscle built and you know that that is going to truly be differentiated, you feel more confident as a company putting those millions and millions of dollars up front that you know is going to be table stakes to build something like that.
Fantastic. Srini, same question to you. Breakthrough moments, incremental product development.
Yeah, Rehgan is spot on, right? The only color I'd add to what she mentioned is this: you are seeing breakthrough innovation every day, and it's coming from the technology companies. There's a new large language model to do things. There are things that you could not do 3 weeks ago that you can do today with AI. If you're a fan of Adobe, which I am, the types of things I can do with photography, which is one of my hobbies, right? The types of things that you can do today that you couldn't do even a month or 2 months ago is just amazing. So there's breakthrough innovation happening every single day in this space. when it comes to enterprises that are using this technology, Rehgan again is spot on there, because the things that they tried to build is now subsumed by the stack, right? And so in that particular case, I think, like, for the next year and the year after that as well, a lot of the focus should be on how do we solve problems that we already have, right? If you've been any way associated with the IT industry for the last 10 years, the talent war, war for talent, all of that stuff. I think that changes significantly, because what AI does, and you and I have talked about it, Jeff, what AI does is it replaces the SME. That person who knew how to build the perfect Java library and perfect API calls to write high quality code, don't need them. GitHub Copilot can get me there. It's 70% of the way there. And not just that, GitHub Copilot can get me there, and it could bring other people along much quicker. Because if I had one SME, then that person him or her can help 3 or 4 others. But the GitHub Copilot and standards, I can bring along armies of people to be able to do this. So I think what you start seeing in enterprises, again, take that software development example and apply it to insurance claims adjusters, right? You go take a look. I gave you an example of how do we use leverage technology to make sure that you're using the right resource, nurse practitioners versus physicians in the process to be able to do that. You'll see a lot more of that happening in the industry, right? Like in enterprises that we work with. But breakthrough innovation for the next couple of years and moving forward is going to happen there. I saw a couple of comments in the thing about green energy and like what can AI be doing in that space. Yeah. There's so much amazing research coming in, and I would be surprised if by the end of the year we don't have new chips. Like, there are already chips that specialize only in doing inferencing, right? And they sip energy as opposed to what we've got today. If you just look at what's happened to NVIDIA, phenomenal company, by the way, and seeing what's happened to their stock price, this is capitalism. It's not surprising that you see so much investment going into that space to come up with alternative designs for doing that, including from NVIDIA to do it. So I think the breakthrough innovations are going to keep coming, and as we help enterprises implement it, is to kind of make sure that you stay away from those things, because you just have to trust that that's going to happen. If it's not there here today, it's going to be there 3 months later. Right?
That's right.
So what can we be doing? And a lot of what Rehgan talked about earlier absolutely applies to what we do.
Yeah. So folks, so many good comments. We're trying to grab as many as we can, whether the comments or questions. Know that we will come back in and the panelists will all get in and engage with you in the comments. So if we don't get your question answered live, we'll get in there and chat with you in the comments after a while. But Rehgan, we found in the research, of course, none of this is possible without people. We're talking about different areas, whether we're augmenting or removing an SME in certain areas. But if we don't have people to implement, manage, and do all the things, well, we're nowhere. So what are some strategies that companies can, so look at that. 85% of companies have attempted AI or ML skill recruitment. So what are some strategies that you recommend that companies do to combat the talent challenges?
Yeah, I'd say there's 2 sides of this, and the research that you all reported on was super telling. So on the one side, it's on the adoption piece. So you've got skills mentioned, like critical thinking skills, folks that are trying to do their jobs differently, think more elevated in a more creative fashion. We see a democratization of building some of these AI solutions in a low code, no code environment. So I think companies are really trying to get folks to be more in the building mindset and less in just kind of task doing mindsets. So that takes a lot of education and training and upskilling internally. You flashed up the pretty obvious kind of skill acquisition, AI, ML skill set. I think folks have in traditional industries like insurance and banking, where they've been doing machine learning for a long time, they have really robust skill sets internally already, but they're looking to acquire new skills on this generative AI path, which is different. It is different. And so companies are recognizing that the technical skills that you need to build these solutions internally are different. The existing AI and ML skill sets need to be upskilled. And then in addition to that, They're looking for folks who can help advise and reduce costs and help create the technical feasibility strategy internally. A lot of people last year were spending lots of money on consultants and external experts to help them guide through this situation so they're not spending or overspending in some cases. And so I think a lot of organizations are trying to build that level of expertise internally as well.
Yeah. So Srini, I'm going to go to you for just a second because there's a comment down here that said, oh, how's that scroll? Darn scroll. So Ben makes the comment, he says, OMG, I never considered using AI for employee training programs. That would change so much for our sales approach. That was actually one of our first here at Rackspace programs that we built, and that was an intelligent co-pilot to help people get the information that they needed. 60 seconds or less. Tell us about that.
Well, we call it Rackspace ICE. ICE is the intelligent co-pilot for the enterprise. If you think about Rackspace, we've got 25 plus years in this industry with a lot of really good knowledge around how to build, operate, and run these systems. Attrition happens, things change. There's a lot of information that's latent within the organization, but it's not accessible to someone who comes in new. What ICE does is to actually take that and build it on top of the generative AI tools. And by the way, everything that we just talked about is true even for us. We built ICE last year in June, right? If I look at Amazon Q right now, it probably does about 50% of what we did with ICE. Yeah. Right. So now the question is, okay, that's pretty cool. How do I leverage something like Q to do the parts that Amazon's investing in? And with that capacity that we just got for doing that piece, what else can we actually put on top of ICE to be able to drive that? And I think most organizations will be in the same place, right? Because companies have existed for a long time. There's just data sitting everywhere. There's tacit information sitting in tacit knowledge sitting in people's heads. You got to be able to bring that out so that you get the best out of this.
Right. And folks, how would you realize that there's some really great nuggets of what Srini just said in there. The first is when he makes the comment about what Q does now, and there's so many people worried about, well, what happens to these jobs when AWS, when AI comes in and takes all the jobs? It changes the jobs. Instead of somebody who codes the thing and moves to the next thing, who's going to pay attention to these new services that AWS comes along, and how do we adapt and evolve over time? And it also speaks to the training aspect as well and employee enablement, to which Rehgan talked about earlier. All right.
Go ahead. Do I have a minute to just give you an example so that people can, everyone talks about critical skills and other critical thinking skills and others, right? Happen to be one of those really old guys who grew up when you had to read a map, and I'm just surprised that I didn't have to use the sextant before, but is it like, reading a map and others. GPS and self-driving cars and others have all replaced that by now, right? AI has replaced that by now. So that doesn't mean so the thing that's actually pretty cool is you still need to know if the car is saying it's taking you, like I live in Columbus, if it's saying it's taking you to Cleveland and it's heading south, you need to know that something's wrong. Yeah. You get where I'm going with it, right? But when you have a whole set of people who have grown up just knowing what the AI tells you, then you start becoming mindless bots. So I tend to turn it on its head and say, that is the future of humanity, right? Let it deal with that piece, but you've got to know what's right from wrong. You're going to have to apply those critical thinking skills to know that, when this is taking you in the wrong direction, you're recalibrating it to bring it back to it. And as implementers of AI, we've got to be very clear to figure out where you have to put the human in the middle.
That's right.
Where are the cases that you actually can automatically go out and talk to them? So one other comment in there where it said when bots start talking to bots, it's scary. And it's not necessarily scary, because bots are talking to bots, and that's how your stock markets move today. Right? So that's the way it's been going for the last 5 or 10 years. So we're all living in that world already. The question is, what types of things do you actually start putting it into, and where do you turn over the controls to AI, and where do you need to put the human in the middle?
AI does not negate your own supercomputer between your shoulders. All right, Victor, I think you've got some thoughts about this.
It's great, everything that you are talking about, where I summarize maybe in the phrase change management. It's super important in all of this transformation, how to reskill the employees, how to upskill, how to bring knowledge from outside to the company, new eyes, new chips, I would tell the companies to start in the adoption of these new paradigms that exist from generative AI and in general from AI.
That's right. So, Victor, as we move into our last section, I want to start with you for a second. And my question for you is a pretty simple one. And that is, what do you think that the folks watching us today don't know about AI that they should?
Oh, there's a lot of things to say in just one word. Couple of words I will mention is the first one is that recently Amazon, AWS in general, has added new features to improve the generative AI security. For example, custom model import. You can bring your trusted model to Amazon Bedrock. It's one of the aspects, so you can bring it now to Amazon Bedrock. There are certain parts that you need to be careful in that part. Model evaluation is one of the important things, because if you already have your data set, your golden data set, to validate the models that you are evaluating for the right fit for the right use case, model evaluation is one of the new features that Amazon Bedrock is bringing, including guardrails. Guardrails are an important part in security to validate inputs and outputs of the models, to validate hallucinations, and to start supporting the addressing of OWASP top 10 LLM risks that most of the security practitioners know about them when talking about AI security. There are also new features and improved features on Amazon agents for Amazon Bedrock. It's one of the new features. Also, an invisible watermark for Amazon Titan generated images to prevent misinformation spreading is another new feature that I invite you to test. And finally, one of the big announcements that we have is Amazon Q. Amazon Q is not just for building chatbots. There are 3 different editions from Amazon Q in AWS, Amazon Q for developers, that not only generates code, it helps you to analyze, to scan code from a security standpoint, and also to provide you from suggestions how to improve that code. Amazon Q for business users, where you can generate narratives and reports together with Amazon QuickSight. And finally, Amazon Q for Amazon Connect, which goes beyond just agent assistance, is doing something more substantial in terms of trying to make suggestions about solving issues that customers on a call are reporting to an agent. Those are things that I can tell you so far, but there's more. I invite you also to visit the AWS website for generative AI.
Because by the time we finish this show, there will be more new stuff over there because of the pace of innovation. Rehgan, over to you. And folks, in the chat, what do you think that you know about AI that people really should know that you think they don't? So Rehgan, over to you.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that people don't know this, maybe just a reminder, but it's not if it'll be wrong, it's when. These things are probabilistic. And so I just encourage everyone to continue thinking, for whom does this fail? And how do we design to make AI more responsible?
Rehgan is our realist in the room. Thank you, Rehgan. Srini, why don't you bring us home on that question? What do you think people don't know about AI, but should?
I don't know if it's they don't know, but it's really more of there's probably a misconception, right? So when people start thinking about, is AI going to replace jobs, it's going to replace a lot of this piece. Like, if you think about the workforce as 3 major segments, whatever industry you're in, there are the people who do they do the toil, right? Like they pull data together, they put spreadsheets together so that people can make decisions, and there's that layer. Then there are the whole layer in the middle that is that does a lot of the work, but it depends on subject matter experts. Yeah. And then you have this upper crust of subject matter experts, and others like consultants and others who pretend to be subject matter experts, who actually come in and do that. And that's been the model of the tech industry. And you look at insurance, I've been in insurance and healthcare. It's the same model that comes in. Here's what people don't know. The first job that's going to be impacted by AI is the experts. I don't need an expert, because if I can go to a model and if it can give me an accurate answer, even with the hallucinations, 98% of the time, it's way better than X consultant, insert your name in there, right? Like whichever company it is, it's way better than that because the human is limited by what they can bring in. AI, and by its nature, the experts are going to go away. And when you actually do implement that expertise, it can bring along many more people. Best example, you and I have talked about it, Sal Khan, right? He's basically, the problem with education today is that the education system in the US and other places is geared to the lowest common denominator, not in a negative way. It's geared to the person that's the slowest to learn, right, in that organization. So people are not able to kind of calibrate that. And what Sal Khan is basically talking about with the Khan Academy and others, and what he's done with Khanmigo, is that you get an individual tutor for each person. Teacher shortages. People don't know that. But if I can get an individual tutor for someone, and if I'm able to learn, if I'm slower than the others, I take my time to come along, versus the person that is probably 2 grades ahead can keep moving ahead, right? Start thinking about it that way, because what it's going to mean is like the workforce has to evolve. And I'll leave you guys with this, right? I think organizations should invest as much, if not more, in training their humans as they're training their models, right? We spend a lot of time on the models in this space. We got to be able to give humans a way to kind of go in and do more and move into these other areas, because otherwise, back to that last component, it's not sustainable.
So true. Srini, I think we're going to take that phrase, train your humans as much as you train your models, and make T-shirts and make them available. So thank you so much. Victor, Rehgan, Srini, thank you so much for being a part of the program. I know it's a lot of time out of your day, and your expertise is so appreciated here to share with the rest of the world. So thank you so much for being here today. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of our program today. Another huge thank you to AWS and their sponsorship of the research in our time. So I'd love for you to, there's the QR code right now. So if you're anxious and you want to go get your copy of the research, well, you can scan that QR code and go get it now. Also, a huge thank you to the production team, to Daniel, to Megan, and to Gracie and Nadia and everybody else working behind the scenes. I appreciate you so much. We could not do this without you folks at Global AI Report. If you don't want to scan and you want to wait, if you registered for the event, it's going to show up in your inbox. So you can just watch for that there. I'll be back next week with a regular scheduled Cloud Talk Live. And I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, everyone, thank you so much for spending part of your morning or your day with us as we unpack the 2024 Global AI and Data Report. So thanks so much. Have a good day.